Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Mohsin Memon. Currently, Mohsin Memon is helping learning facilitators how to use games to facilitate virtual and classroom instruction-led training programs. He dreams of a world where people play to learn, and he's passionate about game-based learning, gamification, and games in general. Mohsin uses games and technology to change the way learning happens by creating real and authentic lifelike learning experiences that ultimately lead to realization and then change. In the past, he has worked as a learning designer and facilitator. He has facilitated learning experiences for Marsh, Netflix, Flipkart, Uber, Siemens, Bayer, JP Morgan, Capgemini, GIA, GroupM, JLT, and many others. He's also worked as an IT project manager with Delta Airlines and Wal-Mart, where he implemented some really exciting technology solutions. All in all, he's a lifelong adventurer, a wandering nomad that worked all kinds of jobs, from sales to customer service to construction to learning designer to game designer, you name it. Welcome to the podcast, Mohsin.
Hi, thanks for having me here, Kimberly.
Yeah, so you've been quite on quite a lot of adventures, sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah, my whole life has been a bit of an adventure, lots of ups and downs, and I've been enjoying every last bit of it.
That is wonderful. And I'm excited about anything that has to do with games or having fun because I'm one of those people that if it's not fun, I won't do it.
I
So
hear you.
if
Absolutely.
make doing the dishes fun, you have to do it, sing or do something to make it fun. So,
Absolutely. You can turn that into a game as well.
okay. Yeah, I'd love to hear how. So, anyways, just so people can get to know you, tell us your story.
Wow, quite a loaded question there, Kimberly. I'm gonna try. Well, I first off, I'm incredibly passionate about games and what I do today, and I am so fortunate and so blessed to be doing what I do, because every day I work. First off, I work a 4-day work week, and and that leaves me 3 days of time to do whatever I want. Some of which is either watching TV or playing games or learning something new. And by about Sunday evening, I'm ready to get back to work. And that feels so great because I know a lot of people have something they call Sunday blues. And by the time Sunday afternoon rolls around, they're kind of dreading getting back to work. And so in that sense, I find myself to be very, very fortunate and blessed to be able to feel so good about the work that I do. What's brought me here has been a series of experiments, trials, and errors, and something that eventually led me to be building games, which is what I do today. And I'll be glad to talk to you about some of those ups and downs. Um, but that's pretty much, in a nutshell, if you will, how I got where I am.
hmm So, when you were growing up, is there anything that caused you to that you think was a kind of a something, a foreshadowing of that you were going to get into this gaming and
Gosh, no, that's the crazy and the most funniest thing, because as a kid, I always wanted to be an aeronautical engineer, and I was always inclined with mathematics and physics, because early on, I remember asking the adults in my life, what does it take to become an aeronautical engineer? And they said, well, you need a lot of math and a lot of science and physics specifically. So I started really focusing on a lot of math and a lot of science. And then the harsh reality hit me. I was somewhere in high school, maybe junior year or so. I remember my dad sitting me down and saying, "Look, kid, we're first generation immigrants into the United States, and unlike a lot of others, we don't have a lot of savings. And so the school you want to go to, Embry-Riddle, is in Daytona Beach, and it is expensive, and we are not going to be able to afford it. And so whatever you do, you're going to need to make it on your own, financially at least. He said, you'll have all the moral support that you can possibly get from us, but financially, our hands are tied. And it was about that time when I had to make a very tough decision about what I was going to do, and how I was going to become an aeronautical engineer. And clearly that didn't happen the way I had planned. But that's life, isn't it? Right? Mm-hmm. Along the way, you make plans, you have ideas of what you want to do in your life, but then along the way you have realizations as well. And sometimes those ideas also are not your own. That's the other thing that I realized, because as a kid, the reason I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer was because my dad had sort of planted the seed in my mind, as a kid. And as a young adult, I now look back and I realize that wasn't my dream to begin with. So maybe had I gone down that path, perhaps I wouldn't be as happy or as fulfilled as I am now. So it was then that I made a pivotal decision of learning and focusing on investing in myself. I got into a mentorship program, which was extremely valuable for me at that point in time. And this mentorship program helped me to learn about entrepreneurship, about values, about business, about leadership. And it really inculcated and developed some of these core values that I now live by, and paved the way and laid the kind of foundation for me to eventually do what I do now. And I think if there's one thing that I could say about all of this, is my mentors always said that, you have a choice of investment. You can choose to invest in stocks and bonds, and choose to invest in these material things which are outside of you, or you can choose to invest in yourself. And if you invest in yourself, that's an investment that will never go wasted, because you can always rely on yourself to achieve whatever goal you have, even though goals may change.
Yeah, that is great advice. And so from there, how did you invest into yourself, and what did you start out as far as your career? What did you start out working at?
Wow. This is a bit nostalgic, because I'm the type that doesn't spend as much time thinking about the past. And because I'm more forward thinking, I'm more in the present moment, and I don't tend to think about as much of the stuff that's happened in the past. So I'm gonna try a little bit here and say that one of the things that I did do was I never went to college, and instead I used the time, the money, the effort, energy into working on the mentorship program and developing a business. So I started entrepreneurship at a very young age. I was 18 when I started running my first business, and I used a lot of the time and energy to also read. I read all kinds of books, and mostly self-help. So books like, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or The Magic of Thinking Big, or The Secret, or there are a whole laundry list of books, even books by Og Mandino, incredible books. I don't know if you've read any of them, but The Greatest Salesman in the World, The Greatest Miracle in the World, brilliant books and such incredible messaging. And then there's another one of my favorites, The Go-Getter. I don't know if you've read that one.
Book, yeah.
Love that book, right? The blue vase, it is so iconic, it is so symbolic, makes such a difference. And these kinds of books early on really helped me to get into the mindset of knowing that whatever financial situation I'm in, whatever conditions, whatever scenarios I'm dealing with are my own doing, and that I am here because of me, and I can no longer look outside of me and look at my circumstances and blame them for what's happened to me. because for as long as I do that, as long as I say, gosh, I wish my parents had more money that I could put me through college and they could, I could do this. Look at all my friends, they're going through school and they're making a life of themselves. One guy's becoming a lawyer, another guy's becoming a doctor, another guy's becoming an IT engineer, or whatever. And for as long as I'm doing that, I am shifting blame outside of me and I'm no longer looking at myself. But the moment I am able to say my condition, my situation, my world today, me, myself, I am a result of my own actions, I can then start to do something about it. And that really was one of those things that I did that changed a lot of how I dealt with failures and things that happened along the way.
Nice. Yeah, and before we came on, we were talking about, I'm from Georgia, from the Atlanta area, and you had worked in Atlanta early on with Delta Airlines, which is our largest airline here. And how did that happen?
Wow, that was a stroke of chance, providence, call it what you will. But it was a consulting opportunity. So there was, they had a need for a junior business analyst. I knew somebody. And one of the other things I learned in my entrepreneurship stint was I learned how to network, which was such an important skill, I feel, especially for someone like me who didn't know anybody. I grew up in a very kind of a middle class sort of family with not a whole lot of connections, and first generation immigrants. We didn't have any family in the United States, so it's not like we had anybody who could connect me with anyone who was doing something with their life. My dad worked in construction, my mom worked at Dunkin' Donuts, so I mean it was a very, very basic and so I knew that the people that were going to help me were people who were not in my circle. They were beyond my network. And so one of the things I would do is I would meet people very intentionally, very categorically meet people as and when I would go to the grocery store. And I remember walking into a Kroger's one day, and I saw a man walking in with his kid, and he was just kind of walking into the grocery store, and a dog, and I kind of ruffled the dog's hair and just kind of struck up a conversation, and by the time we reached the entrance of the grocery store, he asked me if I'd be interested in an opportunity to work as a consultant. And he had connections within Delta Airlines wherein they needed a junior business analyst, and I hadn't worked in corporate ever. And so he trained me, and he had a consulting practice. He trained me, gave me the skills I needed to be an effective business analyst. I learned a bunch of really interesting stuff, and that really kind of set the path for me in getting into information technology. And from there, I felt like I did quite well. I worked with Delta for about 2 years and ended up reaching a project manager level, which too happened quite by chance, actually. It's a different story, but yeah, that's kind of how I got started with my corporate career.
Wow. So when you left Delta, did you just go out on your own as a consultant, or do you continue to work with this gentleman?
No. So at that point, I found another opportunity to work with Wal-Mart in Bentonville, Arkansas, and so moved there for a little while and worked there for nearly 2 years as well. And it was about that time when I realized that one, that I had a love for learning, because my learning teams loved me because I would always whip up something on the whiteboard and work with my teams and do something or the other, and that was a lot of fun. And I realized that was my so-called native genius, because I loved to and by nature I'm a bit of an introvert, actually, but my love for learning and my love for giving ended up allowing me to share whatever it is that I knew. And so I worked with Delta, and it was about that time that I realized I wanted to get into learning and really shift careers and start to do something that I would find a lot of passion in doing. And that's what got me out of the United States as well, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we make learning fun?
Wow. I think one of the best ways to make learning fun is through games. Games play a significant role in how, not just games but play. You know, we learn through play. We've always learned through play, whether you see kids and or even young adults, and when we're able to create playful experiences, we're able to create what is known as the magic circle. Are you familiar with the magic circle?
Why don't you explain it?
Yeah, sure. So magic circle is this really, really interesting concept. And the idea of magic circle is that within, and it's not my idea, this was first discovered and communicated by Johann Huizinga many years ago, hundreds, maybe over 100 years ago. And he talks about this magic circle, and he says that inside this magic circle, magic can happen. And for magic to happen inside the circle, you need three things. Number one, you need a player. Number two, you need a plaything, that is the thing that the player is interacting with. And number three, which is really where a lot of the work in game design goes into, is the interaction between the player and the plaything. So if you look at a game of soccer, right, the soccer field is the magic circle where the magic is happening. The players have to kick this ball into the net, right? And the rules determine how people feel while they're inside the magic circle. You feel a sense of energy, you feel a sense of freedom, you feel a sense of excitement, passion, competition, collaboration, all of these kinds of emotions and behaviors start to surface, which can be so powerful when we take a step back and we look at what happened inside the magic circle to draw learning from. And that could be a really, really important medium to learn and draw insights from.
Wow. So we can take one of these circles and just superimpose it on whatever we're doing. How does that work?
Yeah, so what you're talking about is gamification. And I think what you just said is one of the simplest yet most profound examples or definitions of gamification. What gamification simply says is that you could take your life and you can place a layer of game on top of your life and gamify that. So we were talking about doing dishes earlier, and we could gamify that. So if you could, for every dish that you washed, you get a point or something. And those points, when you accumulate sufficient points, they convert into something else. And when they convert into something else, you could use them for something that could be in the category of self-care. And so every time you're doing the dishes, you're actually moving one step closer towards your self-care goal, whatever that may be, right? And so, yeah, superimposing this magic circle, and really the crux of all of this is the interaction design, the game design, which is the interaction between the player and the plaything. And that's where I do a lot of my work today, which is to design games that are meaningful and valuable, and can really create a shift in behavior for people, as opposed to just slapping points, badges, and leaderboards onto things, because that's really not the answer. And I have created games that have no points, no badges, no leaderboard, yet are super engaging. And that's going beyond some of these nuances. These are enablers. They're not the end in itself.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense to me because, I don't know if you call it gamification, but for years, a company will want people to push sales, obviously, because that's how companies survive. So you've got to have sales. But what happens is when they have these competitions, as you notice, the same people win every time, and the same people could care less every time. You know what I mean? They are not motivated for some reason. They're not motivated by the money or the prizes or whatever. They just go in, do a good job, but they are not going to be the one who's going to stay up at night trying to get the sale. So when I look at that, I think that's kind of a broken, it might work for some, but it's going to work with the top 20%. It's not going to work with the other 80% of the people pretty much. So how do you go into it? Let's say a company does want to, obviously they've got to have sales.
Yeah.
So they want to teach people to do that and to have fun and to feel like they have a purpose doing it. Because I think when people have purpose or they know why they're doing something, that's part of it. So how do you create that?
Yeah, that's a great example that you've quoted, because this is one of the challenges with gamification, which is that the most standard definition of gamification seems to only appeal to one subset of people, which is the people who are either gamers who love to play, who love competition, or another subset of people who would have done well anyway, with or without this game. So they would have excelled in the work that they're doing anyway, right? I think good game design or good gamification starts with identifying your target audience. Who are you? Who are you looking to influence? What are their motivations? And really understanding a whole basket of motivations. Yukai Chow, who's a leader in the industry, has come up with a model called the octalysis, which is a great model to follow as well for looking at the different motivations in gamification. And I can't go through all 8 of them, but broadly said, they are broken into 4 different categories. It is something called white hat motivation or white hat mechanics, which are more positive enforcements like accomplishment and ownership, whereas you've got black hat, which are more negative or slightly black hat components, like your scarcity or avoidance. You do something to avoid something else. And then you've got personal intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators. So using this kind of a model can help you to really chart out your game design in a way that is appealing to everybody. And that's one part of what I would recommend doing. Another thing I would also recommend doing is to look at creating categories so that people don't win. There's not just one way to win. There are many different ways to win. And so also recognizing personalities, recognizing the innate capabilities of people, and translating that into the game and awarding people based on that. So those are a couple of different things that I would recommend instead of just using plain vanilla gamification of points or awarding monetary awards for completing. And that's actually known scientifically now to reduce motivation, to reduce engagement when there's a financial association with achieving a goal. And I'll explain this in a really quick and short way. So imagine you work through a weekend, right, to get a project done. And in doing that, by let's say Monday, you go back to work and you receive a note from your manager who says, "Hey, congratulations, great work. You've done this project, is finally complete. Well done. And for that, we're going to award you an additional $150. And yeah, $150 is great. I mean, because it came out of nowhere, you weren't expecting it. But when you really start to look at, okay, I spent like 40 hours over the weekend working on this, worked overtime, and was that worth $150? So what you start to do is you start to map what time you spent with the amount of return on quote unquote investment that you got from that, as opposed to if you were to get a non-monetary value or something that you could not quantify, would have a lot more sentimental value associated with it as opposed to having a monetary association.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about that. I thought, if they give me, if I work Saturday and Sunday when I normally don't work it, then I would want them to give me 2 paid days off. That's what I would want.
There you go.
People, I don't want the money. Just give me those two paid days off and
there you go.
My time back, because you can't get time back.
That's a beautiful way to look at it, because now you get 2 paid days, and that's because so it's, or maybe even as a reward, 3 paid days, right? Because you did that out of your own volition, you went above and beyond, and we're going to appreciate you by giving you time, which is so beautiful. Such a great way to look at it.
Exactly. So, with the techniques you're using, are you going into schools in educational situations, or are you always working with corporations or companies?
So we have partners that we work with that are working with educational institutions, and that's been a really, really interesting area to work with as well. Our primary focus at the moment is to work with corporate and to empower learning practitioners. That's who we really work with. So folks like Mary, the one beautiful lady that introduced us, and many like her who are doing learning solutions for their respective clients. So we tend to work with them, but every once in a while we'll have partners that work with educational institutions. And through them, we are able to also tap into education. One of my goals in life is to change the way learning happens. And I live by that. And I want to start right at the elementary school. One of the things I dream of is, imagine kids go to school to play instead of to learn, because learning can happen as a byproduct of play. And I think of school, I think of kind of the ecosystem wherein you could actually have an entire school year as a theme. Like maybe in 1 year, you're solving a detective murder case or something like that. And in doing so, you're learning literature, you're learning history, you're learning art, you're learning, mathematics, and you're learning all of these instead of having to sit in classes and go through what the teacher is talking about. You're actually solving a themed situation, like a murder mystery of some sort. In grade 4, it's about, discovering the solution to a murder mystery, as opposed to in grade 5, there's a different theme. And in doing all of this, you're living the entire school year to solve that one case. But in doing so, you are learning math, you're learning science, you're learning history, literature, and all of these things are designed in a way that it's kind of packed into the curriculum in a very neat and unique way, which feels like play.
That sounds like so much fun. I would love that. I don't know what kids or adults actually wouldn't enjoy that.
Yeah, that's the goal. So one piece at a time, one game at a time, we hope to create the change, and ultimately we want to start right at the elementary school level, really create that kind of change and shift, and then move upwards. Because I believe that when we work with the kids, that's really where we're starting to build the future of the world we live in.
Yeah, because then they would have self-interest in what they're doing. I think the challenge for a lot of teachers these days is, the traditional sit in your seat, listen to a lecture is not working so well, because our attention spans are so short. Because we can learn something on YouTube in 2 minutes. Um, and it's really hard to sit and listen to someone talking and talking and talking when you used to be able to consume your information so quickly. So if they were self-directed because they want to find out who did it, the murder mystery, then it's going to be so much more fun, and I see them learning at an accelerated pace.
Absolutely, and that's the key, because they would learn at an accelerated pace. They would learn through experience, and I think that's one of the biggest shifts that also happens, where instead of learning vicariously of something that you heard or read in a book, you're actually learning through your own experiences. You're drawing your own understanding, and even as adults, we know that school can only teach you so much. Much of the experience and much of the knowledge and understanding that we now have is a result of our experiences that we've had as adults, living through life, trying different things. And those can be really, really powerful influencers in the decisions we make and the things we do as well. So yeah, creating more experiences early on.
I was going to say, and just really heighten the creativity of each individual who's doing that. So when I'm looking back and I'm kind of comparing, you could have went to school, went to college, did the traditional, but you ended up with a mentor going into entrepreneurship. And when I look at the schools system right now, they're doing the best they can, especially with all that's happened in the last year and a half. But I see that it's somewhat broken because kids aren't taught entrepreneurship. They're not taught how to look at their financial house and how to handle that. They're not taught some basic things that they need to learn. In fact, it's different in different schools, but sometimes even some of the basic things like, courses that some people need because they weren't taught at home, or even like cooking or the home things or the shop things. Um, there's things in the schools that we need in life that they're not there. They're just
Yeah,
not there. So
yeah.
when you look at the school system and this gamifying, what kind of subjects, if you were going to design it, what kind of subjects would you put in? I mean, obviously we need math, we need our science, we need these different things, but what classes would you keep or put in? Which the ones would you add?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I think that's such a relevant question. If I were to look at this, I would I would leave a lot of the things intact, especially when it comes to math, science, the progression. I think the education system is trying, but they've they're, they've scaled the learning quite well from from first grade all the way up to 12th, and the progression is great. What I would add to that, or maybe remove a little bit, or maybe reduce a bit of history. Uh, it's great to know, but it's not something that's going to really change my life. One of the original reasons why history was a part of education system was so we can learn from the experiences of others. If we're having or creating our own experiences, then we kind of don't need that anymore, right? Then it's only about the knowledge of what happened or what was the Gettysburg Address, right? So, and that's something that all I need to know that there was such a thing called Gettysburg Address, and I can find that on Google. All I need to do is search it now. And so it's no longer about saving information here. It's more about knowing that such a piece of information exists. And that's the shift that we're now looking at as we move from the information age into the experience age. And I think that's the transition that we're all going through at the moment. For a very long time, there's been the information age with the internet boom and all of that. But now we're slowly moving into what we would call the experience age, where information is understood that it is there and it will continue to be there. It's about how do we create those experiences. So another thing that I would add probably to this list is social skills. One of the things that's really missing and I don't mean to say that we need to turn everybody into great social people that they need to interact with or network with one another. It's really about social etiquette. It's about learning how to understand your own emotions. It's because that's been one of the biggest revelations in my adult life in the last maybe 8 years or so, as I've gotten to become more attuned with my own emotions and what I'm feeling and how those feelings are influencing my behavior. Like there are times when I know that I have a tendency of being sarcastic in the event that I'm hurt. So knowing your inner process can really help you to understand how you deal with feeling anxious, or how you deal with frustration, or how you deal with various types of emotions, which many a times seems to almost be on autopilot. And we brush it off saying that's just how he is, or that's just how she is, which is to say, yeah, but there's more to it. And so if each person can start to understand why they respond the way they do or react the way they do, that could aid tremendously in ultimately progressing humankind in towards their goals and what they want to do.
Mhm. Nice. And I don't know if you have experience with this or not, but my background is in behavioral optometry. So I've worked with a lot of children who are in I don't even know what you call it anymore, special needs. They're autistic, or they have learning disabilities, or they have something physical that makes it harder for them to learn. They need special services. Um, how do we add gamifying in that situation?
Yeah, that's a great another great question. I think one of the things we need to do is we need to start to look at what are these special needs, because we cannot blanket everything under one category and say that
That's
this
why
is
I
a
don't even
special
like the
needs game.
term. Yeah, I don't even like the term.
I
Yeah.
don't even like the term.
Mm-mm.
Exactly. In fact, I like to believe that um, that we're all disabled. And I don't know who said this, but I think Maya Angelou, I don't know. But they said we're all disabled. Some have identified or discovered our disabilities. Most of us have not. So it's just a matter of knowing or understanding what your disability is. And we're all disabled in some way, shape, or form. So it's just that some are more apparent. And so we need to identify. It goes back to the drawing board, what I was saying earlier, which is knowing our learners, knowing the people that we're trying to address or create a game solution for, or gamified learning solution for, and then designing for them. So if we're talking about folks who are colorblind, obviously we're going to need to take certain measures towards addressing that kind of a need. If we're talking about somebody who has ADD, right, and ADHD, so we just need to identify what those areas of growth are, and how do we overcome them, or how do we design in a way that, or create affordances in a way that enable that. A great book to read around this area is Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I don't know if you've read it or heard about it, but it's a brilliant book, and he talks about affordances and enablers that can be embedded within the design of very, very simple things. And this is one of the things I believe, as a designer, we have huge responsibility, because if we are lazy in our minds and how we design things, then the stuff we're going to produce as a result is going to be half-assed, and that's just the best way to put it, right? But if we're passionate, and if we feel compelled, and if we feel that we're really own that responsibility, we could be designing some incredible things.
Yeah. So when you go into a corporation or a school or wherever your client is, and you have to assess who's there and what their, strengths are, what their learning styles are, how do you do that? Is there a process for that?
Yeah, there is. There are a number of processes that can be used to address that. It starts with, interviews, knowing who these people are, and even learning styles is a concept which is a little foggy, because some folks buy into the idea of it, some do not, some reject it blatantly. So it's better to see people for who they are, creating sample set groups of people. So if we're working with different regions, then identifying, understanding the norms of those regions, and how the norms play out, cultural influences, and how they play out in the lives of people. For example, the work life of an average worker, a knowledge worker in India, is very different, or the work ethic of an average knowledge worker in India is very different from the work ethic of an average knowledge worker based out of the Netherlands, right? And so these are two different lifestyles, two different, socioeconomic backgrounds, and so how do these play a role on the person? So if you're really designing with intent, then you've got to do your groundwork. You've got to do your homework in understanding who you're designing for. And with that clarity, you can draw some cues to how to go about designing the learning experiences and the games, of course.
All right. So I'm going to switch gears and ask you a personal question.
Sure.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Wow. What gives me the most happiness and fulfillment? So in the last year, one of the things that shifted for me is I've gone from using games for myself, because I built these games for myself. I was doing a lot of work with my corporate clients, and I started to build these games for myself, and they worked great. I made a lot of money doing that. I helped a lot of organizations and influenced a lot of leaders to even see games to be a valuable medium of learning. But in the last year with COVID, a lot of learning practitioners lost or diminished significantly their sources of income due to not being able to facilitate their live experiences or their live classroom experiences. And they were forced to move into the virtual ecosystem. So one of the things I committed towards was to empower and enable these learning practitioners with my games. So I built an entire certification program, which is a 4-week-long certification program to help learning practitioners learn how to use game-based learning in order to facilitate classroom learning experiences. And today, we've got just over 50 certified facilitators around the world. And I know that's not a big number, but every last one of these facilitators that every time they cross the finish line brings me immense fulfillment, immense satisfaction, being able to assist these people. And in retrospect, now that I look at it, many of them have created new streams of income for themselves as a result of that. And that brings me immense joy. So I'd have to say that it's that.
Awesome. Which leads into my next question, which was, if people wanted to work with you or connect with you, how do they do that? What services do you have available now for people?
Sure. Very easy to connect with me. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and people can write to me on LinkedIn. We can message and exchange ideas. Even if they want to learn about games, gamification, I'm more than happy to share whatever little bit I know about it. And sometimes people want to learn how to make games themselves, so I can direct them to various resources, things that kind of got me started. Very humble sort of approaches like Coursera courses for free and things like that, very economical as well. And so, yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Another way to also engage is to attend one of my games. I host a weekly game for my LinkedIn network, wherein they get to join and play and interact with other learning practitioners who have similar mindsets and draw learning as a result of it. So those are a couple of ways to get in touch with me.
That does sound like fun. So thanks for offering that.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And it's been a great conversation, and thanks for sharing all you know.
Thank you. Likewise, I had a blast. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So one last question before we complete. What is your best advice for living an incredible, amazing life?
What is my best advice for living an incredible, amazing life? I would say get started, do the things that bring you the most joy, and do them sooner than later, because there's no guarantee of how long you're going to be on this ball of mud, right? So make the most of every day and just try it. I mean, what's the worst that can possibly happen? That's one of the things that I ask myself when I was in India, and about 8 years ago, and I was expanding my business. I got connected with someone in Malaysia, and I started growing my business in Southeast Asia. And I asked myself, I was a little hesitant. I felt anxious. I wasn't sure. I'd never been to Malaysia. I didn't even know where it was on the map. But I said, you know what, let's give it a shot. What's the worst that could possibly happen? And today I have some incredible friendships in Malaysia, Indonesia, in Singapore. And these are partners that we work with. And a lot of our, not just revenue, but a lot of our relationships are now intertwined, which is so beautiful. So I would say get started. Don't hold back. Try and see where you go. Give it your all every day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.